tropics continue to grumble with 6 areas of interest on tonight's tropical weather bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical weather bulletin for November 10th. So we still have 0 active tropical cyclones, which is not too uncommon at this time of year, but no less than 6 areas of interest trying to become the next one on our tally for the year. 75 so far, and we're code blue for several of them actually. Let's go through them then. First of all, the Caribbean area of interest that we're still monitoring closely, 20% chance that we're now giving, and it does appear that the threat is slowly starting to increase, and we'll see where the indications take us as we get towards next week when it's expected to form. In the Eastern Pacific, we've still got that area of interest there, which is sort of along the front now, a 10% chance still on that. It is at the tail end of that front, which is spewing all kinds of rainfall and such all the way into the Mexican interior in the United States. In the Western Pacific, we've got these 2 areas of interest, and we're really not sure what's going to happen with them. Some models have the western one forming, others have the eastern one forming. Both of them are giving a 20% chance. We've also marked the Bay of Bengal now for a potential system that could form, being picked up by the GFS and one other model, I can't remember which now, but 20% on that we're giving for a potential development that will move through the Andaman Sea and into the Bay of Bengal proper towards the coast of India, probably next week. And in the southern hemisphere, chances have dropped to just 10% for that area of interest that initially looked quite confident, but chances are quite low now for that development. Could still happen as it tracks towards Fiji, just off the east islands of Vanuatu. So let's check today's satellite imagery, and the invest in the Eastern Pacific, the one that we've designated, does look quite impressive. Not an official invest actually, but we've marked it, and it does look impressive there. A little bit of rotation, some convection. Here's the Atlantic right now, in case you were wondering. This probably isn't going to become the tropical system that we're looking at, but it will eventually come in from the east in this area off the coast of Nicaragua. Now this is the Western Pacific area of interest that's moving through the Micronesian islands at the moment. It's past Chuuk there off to the right hand side, and it's still struggling to get convection anywhere near where its supposed centre would be, and a centre is still not forthcoming either. But it is looking a little bit better than it did yesterday, and so the chances are definitely there for it, but still quite low at this time, and I would just say very uncertain rather than unlikely. And this is the Southern Hemisphere system then, off the Solomon Islands, struggling to figure out exactly where this is, but still very, very poor organisation at this time, and it could still be maybe another day before it starts to get itself formally having a centre that we can actually fix, because I'm still not convinced that we've got one right now, and convection is very precious little, except way off to the northeast. Well, let's take a look at the sea surface temperatures. They haven't changed very much, but that cooler area is starting to build in the Gulf of Tehuantepec now, which is what usually happens in the off-season months, but still near 30 degrees Celsius in a region off the coast of Mexico. The hotspot in the Caribbean is between Cuba, Jamaica and Haiti, up to around 30 degrees Celsius, and a spot there off the coast of Nicaragua, which of course is where that system is supposed to form next week if it does. Very warm sea surface temperatures. I don't think we can rule anything out just yet. In the Western Pacific, still quite a lot of warm waters there, particularly in the Philippine Sea, and off the west coast of Luzon, temperatures over 30 degrees Celsius, and around Guam and the Mariana Islands too, temperatures looking good there. I wouldn't rule out a late season hit in any of those places I've mentioned. North Indian Ocean, very warm in the east, and these are all areas where we've got these areas of interest marked. Andaman Sea there, above 30 degrees Celsius. Those temperatures decrease as it moves further north. And the Southwest Indian Ocean, nothing here yet, but you can see those sea surface temperatures still increasing off the coast of Madagascar particularly, and the Australian region boiling hot now off Western Australia, over 30 degrees Celsius in those low latitudes. Coral Sea is slowly catching up. South Pacific also really catching up quite quickly. Fiji now getting temperatures close to 28 degrees Celsius along its northern coasts. In the anomalies in the South China Sea, that's certainly the hot spot in the Western Pacific, around 3 degrees above average. In the Eastern Pacific, it's generally above average, but a few cool spots. And in the Caribbean, it's around 2 degrees above, especially in that area where that area of interest is located. El Nino effect still rather pronounced there, and the southern hemisphere, certainly a warm slot near Mauritius. Oceanic heat content isn't really high near Nicaragua, but the hot spot there is between Jamaica once again and southern Haiti. And in the Eastern Pacific, we've still got that small spot off the coast of Mexico, and in the Western Pacific, we've got that corridor at around 15 degrees north, stretching from Luzon in the Philippines through to Guam and then on towards the Marshall Islands. So let's see what the GFS model has in store for us then. This is just one model, and other models are showing different things as always. Next 5 days shows these two systems. The first one, which of course we already have on the satellite, which doesn't form. The second one there forming near the end, that's the Caribbean system, and it looks like it just might get towards tropical depression status within that 5-day period, although I reckon if the GFS is to be believed, it will probably be just after that. But certainly it's starting to get itself together, and it looks like it emerges from Panama, its energy, and then starts to move northwestwards. Looking onto the Western Pacific, the area around Micronesia, you'll see the first system trying to develop initially and then being dragged towards the east a little bit, and then this second system forming and overtaking the first one in the end, maybe not quite within that 5-day period as it tries to form. And also looking at this system in the Andaman Sea coming up out of nothing here, the GFS is quite intrigued by this one, moving through the Andaman Islands and into the Bay of Bengal and becoming a tropical storm before the end of that 5-day period. Now quickly looking towards the South Pacific as well, this very broad system, unorganized, messy system is definitely what we got to say about this. Really struggles to get that circulation sorted out at all within that 5-day period, but it may still do so just as it reaches Fiji, and could of course, regardless of whether it manages to close off that circulation, deliver some strong winds to the area and maybe even off towards Tonga as well. Well, let's take a look at the rainfall parameters for the Caribbean, and I'm afraid there's been a major uptick on this forecast model compared to what we were looking at this time yesterday. Now we expect the system to be closer to land, and like I said yesterday, that little movement near the beginning where it's not moving very quickly has been brought closer to land, which means a huge amount of rainfall possible now, maybe up to 24 inches along the coast of northern Nicaragua into eastern Honduras. That is 600 millimeters, and possibly above 12 inches in Jamaica, which is over 300 millimeters. This is an uptick compared to yesterday, but about the same as it was the previous day in terms of the storm's strength, which you're about to see. And the GFS has gone off on one again because it is forecasting quite a powerful hurricane like it did a couple of days ago, and before that it was a little bit more mellow yesterday, but here it is again calling for a Category 3 landfall in eastern Cuba and continuing going the wrong way, does that sound familiar, through the Turks and Caicos Islands and then out towards the east, maintaining major hurricane strength for a lot of that. So it would be a very unusual storm if it did go on like that, but that's what it's currently being predicted, but only the GFS supporting a storm anywhere near that strong in the next 10 days, so a caution advised. Western Pacific also having a storm of its own there. That's that second one that we're watching that was located further east, becoming a very powerful typhoon towards the end of that 10-day period. Now, strong storms this late into the season are much more common in the Western Pacific than in the Atlantic, so I would pay more heed to this, but still not really sure whether this will happen or not, and whether there will be any threats to the Philippines. Now here's the North Indian Ocean system, and that's likely to curve round towards the northeast. Looks like it's going to stall a little bit and lose a lot of its momentum before it reaches Bangladesh. So that's something that's really up in the air as well, really something to look at next week, but certainly a lot of this activity will be next week, so it's going to be a curious time. For the time being though, we can't do much more than just watch and wait to see if the model forecasts change, because a lot of these systems haven't even formed yet. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at our products as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request, bespoke made for you, and are still waiting for Hone t-shirts, which are still waiting to be pulled from the shelves, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. In the Scilly range, the continuation of that Atlantic hurricane, there it is. It stalls for a bit and maybe does a very tight loop and then moves slowly out to sea and then speeds up and then loses, turns extratropical and becomes a very powerful extratropical storm as it spins round up towards the Canadian Maritimes. But a very curious, odd track for the time of year, but it is something that can't ever be fully ruled out. It is the Atlantic, it's had a bit crazy year as well, so can't rule that out fully. Western Pacific, this typhoon then very powerful, still gets to a very high latitude for the time of year. Look at that, it's still going just off the coast of Japan, still tropical, turns post-tropical near Tokyo, and then moves out to sea, doesn't actually make landfall. Then that second system, another system behind it, that forms much further east, you'll see it there whilst we're carried away with the typhoon, and it loses itself for a little bit and then it strengthens again and possibly approaches typhoon status before moving into the Philippines. Both plausible forecasts, but that typhoon really strong for the time of year. I'm not sure on that. You can talk about all of this on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical weather and general chat with thousands of members from around the world. Well, on this day last year, we only had one storm active, but it was a rather memorable one, Hurricane Nicole, which was a late season surprise as well for the coast of Florida. It eventually made landfall there at Category 1 hurricane status and then pushed towards the northwest. And certainly was an interesting storm to track. Late season, unusual properties, certainly didn't look like a fully tropical hurricane, but it definitely did have the power behind it, and its strong winds and heavy rainfall and storm surge. Back to today then, and the next name on the Atlantic naming list, if we get another one, is Vince. In the Eastern Pacific, less likely we'll get another one, and that's Ramon. And in the Central Pacific, the next name is still Hone, as it has been for 4 years. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Jelawat. The North Indian Ocean, it's Midhili. We could possibly see both of those in the next week. 75 storms so far around the world, which is fairly decent. Still a way to go to get to the annual average though. In the Australian region, the next name is Jasper, Southwest Indian Ocean, Alvaro, and the South Pacific's next name is Mal. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.